What's the worst announcement your school ever made? Our principal announced that the senior class trip was canceled because they discovered the money had been misallocated, but the real reason was far more shocking than any of us could have imagined. It was 3 weeks before graduation when Principal Davidson called an emergency assembly for the entire senior class. We'd all been excitedly planning our trip to Rome, Italy that we'd been fundraising for since sophomore year. For 2.5 years, we'd organized car washes, bake sales, talent shows, and sponsored walks. We'd raised over $25,000 through endless hours of work, with every student contributing time and effort to make this dream trip happen. I'm afraid I have some disappointing news about your senior trip, Principal Davidson announced with a straight face. Due to unexpected budget shortfalls and administrative costs we hadn't anticipated, we don't have sufficient funds to cover the trip to Rome. The auditorium erupted. Students started shouting questions about where the money had gone. We'd been tracking our fundraising progress on a giant thermometer display in the main hallway that showed we'd reached our goal months ago. Mrs. Davidson tried to calm everyone down by explaining that unforeseen educational expenses had required them to reallocate our trip funds for more pressing school needs. She promised to investigate options for a scaled-back local trip instead. That evening, my mom got a call from Mrs. Griffin, whose daughter was also in my class. Mrs. Griffin worked at the fancy country club across town and had some disturbing information. I helped coordinate a wedding reception last weekend, Mrs. Griffin told my mom. The bride's mother paid for everything in cash, over $40,000 for catering, flowers, and venue rental. When I asked about payment, she said they will pay all of it with a check because they had extra money laying around. The bride was Principal Davidson's daughter, Emma, who'd gotten married the weekend before our assembly. Mrs. Griffin had recognized Davidson from school events and thought the timing was suspicious. Word spread quickly among parents, and by Tuesday morning, a group of them had requested an emergency meeting with the school board. They demanded a full audit of the senior class fundraising account. The investigation revealed that Davidson had been systematically withdrawing money from our trip fund over the past 6 months. She'd used all of our fundraising money, and plus some of her own, to pay for her daughter's lavish wedding reception. Davidson had falsified documents showing the money had been spent on educational materials and facility improvements that never actually existed. She'd been planning to blame budget cuts and hope nobody investigated too closely. The most infuriating part was learning that Davidson had been planning this theft for months. Her daughter's engagement had been announced in December, and the withdrawals from our account had started in January. When confronted with the evidence, Davidson initially tried to claim the money was a temporary loan that she intended to pay back before the trip. The bank records showed she'd already spent everything on wedding expenses. The school board fired Davidson immediately and filed criminal charges for embezzlement. Local news picked up the story, making our school a laughingstock throughout the district. But the community rallied around our senior class. Local businesses, parent groups, and even neighboring schools organized fundraising events to replace the stolen money. Within 3 weeks, they'd raised enough for us to take our trip as planned. Davidson was convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 2 years in prison. She was also ordered to pay full restitution, though most of the wedding money was already spent and unrecoverable. Sometimes the worst announcements reveal that the people you trusted most were stealing your dreams to pay for their own celebration.